Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's Rustbuck Collector here, and today we are taking a look at 3 all-new bootleg, knockoff, third-party 6-inch Black Series clone troopers. These come from a seller over on Aliexpress, and they've been popping up for about a year, maybe a year and a half now, with just different repaints and some official designs, some unofficial designs. And as you can see here, we have 3 characters from the Umbara arc of the Clone Wars, and these are 3 clone troopers we do not have in the official Hasbro 6-inch line. Now, I've done quite a few videos on bootlegs, especially these 6-inch Black Series bootlegs. I will link those all down in the description. I'll just put a playlist down there that you can check those out. Down in the description, I will also have a link to the seller that I purchased these from, in case you want to get some of these for your very own. Now, like I said, these 3 figures are from Aliexpress. They're shipping over from China, and it took about 2 weeks for me to get these from the day that I ordered, and typically in the past, it's taken about 2 to 3 weeks for any of my orders to arrive, which I would say is pretty fast for shipping all the way over from China, going through customs, and finally arriving at my doorstep. Now, the new trend with this company seems to be to drop 3 new designs each quarter, roughly. It takes about 3 months for a new release to happen. About 3 months ago, they gave us Waxer, Boyle, and this 212th ARC Trooper, all of which were released on the same day, and I bought them almost immediately. I just happened to forget to actually make a video about them. Other people on the internet, on YouTube here, have made videos on these figures. They're really solid. The paint apps are really awesome as well, and I love having these named characters that we have not gotten in Black Series, and maybe we never will. So fast forward 3 months and we have 3 new characters to add to the army, and I love that they're kind of sticking with this Umbara theme with the 212th and now with the 501st. So we have Phase 2 Jesse, Phase 2 Hardcase with that awesome Z6 rotary cannon, which we will talk about, and Phase 2 Appo, which technically this is the second Appo figure that this company has released. Now, all of these figures are on the same mold, and it is a direct copy of the newest Black Series Clone Trooper mold. So I'll go over articulation and everything on one of these, but then just kind of ignore it on the other 2 because they are all the same. I definitely have to start things off though with my favorite, my boy Jesse. I absolutely loved his design from his Phase 1 days all the way up into his ARC Trooper days, and so having this guy in the collection now, a version of Jesse that we have never gotten in action figure form, either in 6-inch Black Series or 3 3/4 inch, is absolutely awesome. Now, as far as I can tell, this figure is not missing any paint apps except for some blue stripes on his hand gauntlets there, but other than that, they have stuck to accuracy on this figure and they have gotten just about everything right. They even have these back panels painted blue there, and even though the stripes are missing on his hands there, I'm really not too bothered by that. That is such a small inaccuracy compared to the overall of having a Phase 2 Jesse in the collection that I'll take it. One other really minute thing is that I feel like the paint here on his shins is way too low. I feel like that should just be up about maybe 6 millimeters or so, just a little bit closer to the knee pads. I think that's a little bit more show accurate. But again, small details like that really don't bother me, especially when these guys are going with a larger army. Small inaccuracies on a third-party knockoff figure like this is not really something that I'm going to be worried about. And if it bothers me enough, and if it bothers me too much, I can always go in and paint it, which is something that I'm far more comfortable doing with a third-party figure than with, an actual official figure. For articulation, like I said, it has all the same joints as a standard Black Series figure. You can get it into all of the different poses. You can flex those shoulder pads up to over 90. The elbows are single jointed into 90, the hands are all hinge and swivel, the torso has the same range of motion, the hips can be swiveled forward, the knees can bend. You can get these figures into some really nice kneeling positions, and overall, just like its official Black Series counterpart, this is a really solid figure. I've been a huge fan of the new Clone Trooper mold from the very beginning, and so, even if it's a bootleg, it still is a really solid basis for a Clone Trooper. One thing I will note with these bootleg figures though is that the joints do tend to be a little bit looser. So you can see here this butterfly joint on his shoulder. It's pretty loose. I can just kind of touch that back and forth and it will wobble there. All of the other joints work perfectly fine, but they definitely move easier out of the box than some Hasbro figures. I don't feel like I have to break these in as much, which could also mean that these joints will wear out a little bit faster. And overall, I think the plastic quality here is just a little bit cheaper than what Hasbro officially uses. Likewise, a lot of the joints can be popped off pretty easily, like the hands, you can just pop those out without really any difficulty, similar to the old 3 3/4 inch days. The same goes for the neck joint, that can just be popped off with almost no problem at all. And the foot joints don't really seem to have any detents at all, like you can just move that into any position you want, which is pretty nice. I do appreciate having that because the Black Series figures really only have like forward, semi-neutral and back as far as where you can position the foot. However, I have found that that means that when you have this figure in a more dynamic pose on a shelf, that sometimes those joints can just kind of like slowly collapse forward, and they don't really have as much locking power as the Black Series joints do. Overall, it's not a big issue, it's just something that needs pointed out. If you're going to handle one of these clones compared to an official Black Series clone, you will notice those differences. Next up, we have Hardcase with his all-new Z6 rotary cannon. This is a weapon we have not yet gotten in the 6-inch Black Series line, but I'm pretty sure that this is just a possibly scaled up, possibly not scaled up at all, 3 3/4 inch Z6 from the Clone Wars line. I know it's not the one that has the spring-loaded feature, but I seem to recall this being included with other Clone Wars figures, and given that it's not quite in scale with a Black Series figure, I'm pretty sure that this is just a straight-up recast of the Clone Wars version. However, in a pinch, it still looks really good with this figure, and if you really don't like it, there's no shame in just giving him a standard DC-15 blaster. Now then, Hardcase certainly is one of the more detailed clone troopers to come out of the Clone Wars, and they really captured all of his intricacy pretty well, I would say. We have all this detailing on the chest and the helmet, we have his ammo pouches painted there, and then coming around to the back, all that line work carries around and is done very, very nicely. There are some alignment issues here on the helmet, and I don't know if that's just my copy or if other people are going to be seeing similar issues with the more fine details here. But again, with these guys being third-party figures, I kind of expect some problems with the paint apps, especially when dealing with these more intricate clones. In fact, I noticed some other paint issues here on the back of Jesse's legs, probably something to do with how they wrapped the paint around, whether they used some sort of like decal process or if they used some sort of pad printing. I really don't know, but there's going to be some issues here. They're not the best quality figures. I think some issues like this kind of come with the territory of these being third-party knockoff figures. They're being made cheaper with lower quality checks and all of that sort of stuff. And yeah, you are paying the $17 to $19 that these retail for, which is kind of the old Black Series prices, but I feel like you're still getting a good enough product. I wouldn't say that this is for like your clone trooper purist, someone that's going to look really closely and be like, oh, he's missing those markings, or, you know, Jesse is missing the paint from his hands. These figures are not for that type of collector. These figures are for collectors who just like the Clone Wars, who like having a lot of unique characters in their armies, and who maybe don't want to spend a bunch of money on a custom figure, or maybe don't have the skills to make their own custom figure. And so, yeah, if you just want Hardcase in your collection and you don't care that maybe some paint apps are a little bit wonky, here you go. Here is a Hardcase for your collection. Here is a Jesse for your collection, and they fit in very nicely with other Black Series releases. One thing that I might actually consider doing is getting a second Jesse just to take his helmet and swap it onto the Black Series release that is coming out soon, because they gave him the ARC Trooper helmet and not his Phase 2 helmet, and I feel like it would be pretty simple just to repaint this helmet with the extra blue markings that he has around the back, because the symbol and these lines are all correct for his ARC Trooper design. He just adds a lot more blue over the rest of the back. And because this is a copy of all the new Black Series Clone Trooper helmets, I think it would fit in very nicely. And then finally, let's talk about Appo, or Appo, however you want to say it. People say it differently. I always called him Appo. Obviously, that is a reference to Appa from Avatar: The Last Airbender. That was something that I think Dave Filoni worked on in some of his earlier years as like working in animation, and so this is just a fun little reference for that. I really love the gritty weathering that's going on with this version of Appo. It reminds me of the more heavy weathering that we see in Revenge of the Sith. So we have all these white scratches coming into the blue, also here on the torso, the shoulder pads, and even on down to the legs. Now it is interesting with Appo here that they decided to give him dual DC-17 pistols. That's certainly not show accurate, but I think it's just a way to make him a more unique and interesting character for an action figure. Thankfully, that's something that can easily just be removed if you don't like it. I certainly will be doing that with my copy, just because I want a more accurate version of Appo. Additionally, they've given him the more Clone Wars style short eye on the chest plate. I would have preferred that that was a little bit taller and more Revenge of the Sith accurate, but once again, with these being the third-party figures that they are, I don't expect absolute perfection. They're still doing above and beyond what Hasbro has been doing with Clone Troopers in recent years, so I can't fault them too much. They're giving us characters that we would never really see in Black Series, and even if they're not exactly perfect, they serve a much needed purpose in filling some voids in our collections. Now, as I mentioned, this is not the first version of Appo that they've given us in this knockoff line. We also got the more comic accurate version of Appo with the pauldron, the dual holsters, and the little cama. which was also released alongside this version with the macro binoculars, which I feel like counts as a Commander Bow release. And if that wasn't enough already, they also gave us a 501st Clone Trooper on this new Black Series mold, and they also made the 332nd Ahsoka Trooper. That was just one that I never felt the need to pick up because I really didn't like the paint apps on this figure. I believe they used the body of that 332nd clone for Appo here, which explains the weathering and the shorter eye pattern, when on the standard trooper you can see that eye is much taller. It is really impressive though to see all these 501st Clone Troopers lined up here. These are all clones that we would probably never see in the Black Series line, let alone see them as quickly as we saw all of these released from the Bootleg Company. In the span of less than a year, we have gotten all of these Clone Troopers released in the Black Series mold, and this isn't even all of them. We've also gotten other legions and other named clones, like Waxer and Boyle that I showed earlier, which these two were just such a surprise when they randomly popped up on Aliexpress. What I love even more, especially with Commander Bow here, is that you can pop this head off with these macro binoculars and you can do something really, really special. If you swap his head over onto a standard 501st Clone Trooper, you now have the Umbara 501st Clone Trooper. And now with Hardcase and Jesse and Appo, we are really filling out the ranks of the Umbara story arc. Of course, I would have preferred all of these to be in the 3 3/4 inch scale. That is where the heart of my collection lies. And maybe someday the Bootleg Company will go and actually make 3 3/4 inch versions of all of these. And maybe, you know, they could get their hands on the molds for a certain Phase 2 animated Clone Trooper and they could just make bootlegs of this guy all day long, and I would buy 100 of them, especially if they made the Umbara Clone Troopers on this mold. That would be a dream come true. But until such time as that, I am really grateful to have any version of the Umbara characters in my collection. This will now be a dedicated area on my shelf where I just have all of the Umbara characters together. I definitely need to track down the Bad Batch version of Captain Rex because it has the rangefinders attached to his helmet, and then I can have an Umbara Captain Rex alongside the other versions of those characters. But all in all, it is really impressive what this company is doing for Black Series collecting and Clone Trooper collecting specifically. Once again, the link to these is down in the description. For the price of $17 to $20 a piece, I really think that they are worth it to either fill out your army, to get some unique characters, or maybe just to have some bases for some customs that you want to work on. All in all, I think that these are great additions to anyone's collection, especially because I don't understand why, but Hasbro just seems to refuse to tap into the unlimited money printing machine that would be making little 3-packs like this. If they made a 3-pack of Appo, Hardcase, and Jesse, or Waxer, Boyle, and Commander Cody, or really any named character or legion, and they just made little bundles like this, a 3-pack for like, you know, $70, 3 figures, $70, or $80 even. I know so many collectors who would jump at the chance to buy something like that. And until they do, I think a lot of collectors are going to be going the way of Aliexpress and picking up figures just like these. The quality of plastic and paint apps may not be quite as high as Hasbro's, but for the average collector who just wants cool, unique Clone Troopers on the shelf, this is perfect. But anyways, that is where I'm going to wrap up this video. So if you liked it, please consider leaving a like on this video and subscribing if you're new to the channel. As always, there's also a link down in the description to my Instagram where I post toy photography, toy news, and stuff like this. Like when these went live, I posted over there immediately and said, hey, everyone who wants these, there are new Clone Troopers over on Aliexpress, and I posted the link and everything, so that's a great way to keep up with the channel as well as keeping up with new releases and things like that. But anyways, thank you all so much for watching. Have a wonderful evening, noon, or night, depending on when you're watching this video, of course. And as always, I'll be sure to catch you all in the next video.